Andrew Craig.
Thank you very much. Thank you to Mike and the Green Party of Ontario for this opportunity to address you. So we have some issues to address. You're all very highly intelligent people, well-versed, so I know there's precious little that I can flag about which you are not currently aware. But a cursory examination, even an incomplete list, would be useful as a starting point for what it is that I would like to offer to you this evening. We are experiencing radical shifts in the job market. You know this. With many traditional jobs disappearing, yet more being redefined. The World Economic Forum predicts that in just 3 years from now, 33% of the core skill set that people need to be competitive will have changed. Despite its relative robustness, our health and our medical systems and institutions are growing under the weight and the cost of delivering modern healthcare to an aging, insufficiently active population. In Canada, the cost of healthcare has soared 70% in the last 20 years, according to a report by the Fraser Institute. That means that a typical family of four in Canada pays on average over $12,000 a year for healthcare. And that's the reality when we're only getting older and less active. Energy, our ever-growing need for it, has become one of the defining challenges of our era. We sit at the crossroads. Turning one way takes us farther down the fossil fuel and nuclear path, while the other direction takes us towards renewables. Renewables can't yet meet our present need and short-term need. But if we invest in the other, we further delay the arrival of affordable, scalable, sufficient, clean power. It is a conundrum. Belligerent and bellicose leaders play chicken against each other. But instead of driving cars, they have nuclear arsenals. They're mobilizing armies. And arching over all of this is climate change. Extreme weather, water crises, Arctic melt, Greenland burning, rapid species extinction. It just makes you want to hide out with takeout and Netflix. But I submit to you that, and this is the thrust of the talk I want to give tonight, that all of these issues, and many that I did not overtly mention, can be reduced or boiled down to simply two: perception and assumption. Now I'm going to come back to these themes repeatedly because I really want to drive them home for everyone in the room. To me, they are critical concepts. And our understanding of these concepts and the power that they hold over us is key in making the kind of change that I feel we need to make collectively to ensure our progress. Let me speak about perception first. One of the definitions of perception is a way of regarding, understanding, or interpreting something, a mental impression. Put another way, something comes into our consciousness through our senses, and based on our life experience, we make it conscious or unconscious decision about what it means. And that's the more sophisticated meaning of the word. The more basic definition, as we all know, is the ability to see or hear or become aware of something or some issue through the senses. But that definition doesn't quite cover what it is that I'm getting at when I say perception. When we were children, we would perceive the car coming down the street. That's using the basic definition. But it was life experience, specifically the instructions of our active protection of our parents or caregivers, that made us come to perceive an oncoming car as a clear and present danger if we stepped out into the street. And over time, we integrated that understanding. Now we look both ways before we cross. And when we see an oncoming vehicle, we instantly equate that with danger. And we modify our behavior. We don't step into the street until the vehicle has passed, if we still want to live. our perception, made more sophisticated by time and experience, now changes our behavior. Hang on to that. When we're governed by our logical mind, we can respond to what we perceive after careful deliberation. To use another car analogy, I know car analogies don't necessarily work in a Green Party context, but stay with me, okay? You perceive that traffic is building in front of you, in the lane you're in, so you make a rational decision to change lanes. But more often than not, and I'm sure you will agree with me on this, we react instead of responding. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time expanding on that because there are endless resources available that extol the virtues of responding versus reacting. But as it relates to perception, reactions come most often when that which is perceived elicits strong emotions like anger or fear. And here, my friends, is why the perception of danger and the manufacturing of fear feeds so heavily into politics. Fear and anger-based politics are now standard issue. The use of fear as a political blunt object, as a primary weapon of political warfare, is so deeply entrenched that it is hard to imagine any candidate achieving success without it. Fear-based politics works like this. If you vote for candidate B, then X, Y, and Z will follow, all of which portend horrible consequences for you, your family, your community, and our nation. That's why I'm your only choice, candidate A. That's the fear-based flavor. We've all heard it. Here's the anger-based flavor. The incumbent and his or her party have made such a colossal mess of things. Can't you see how we have suffered under their so-called leadership? We placed our trust in them, and they've only proven themselves to be self-serving. I'm candidate A, and I promise real change, and I will deliver. Tell me you haven't all heard a variation on those very words. Every one of us has. We've heard these more than we can count. Now there's a distant third way, and that's ideal-based politics. This is the scenario in which candidate A describes some kind of utopian world in which all our problems are solved and where we can recline like ancient Romans being fed grapes off the vine like eunuchs. But that usually sounds like this. I believe in a better world in which affliction A is eradicated, criminal B is incarcerated, and tax C is eliminated, and only I can provide you with this. Have you heard this rhetoric before? The most effective campaigners will use all three of these approaches in different proportions. They have to. No other weapons exist. Politicians practice the art of accumulating power through persuasion. The currency of politics is ideas, expressed through language, through emotion, through passion. Politicians persuade us to give them power through words. And those words are packaged into the club of anger, the cutlass of fear, and the arrow of idealism. I know that I'm waxing philosophical, but I'm asking you to stay with me just a bit longer. We are talking about perception. And the perceptions the Green Party deals with the most are the following. The Greens are a bunch of trade-hugging leftist radicals who have no practical ideas on policy or solution implementation. The Greens are trading on fear surrounding climate change. The Greens are a one-issue party. The Greens speak too much in terms of ideals that are distant at best and have little to offer when it comes to the everyday needs that government needs to fulfill. The mere presence of the Green Party splits votes and gives power to the parties I don't like. That makes me angry. I'm voter X, and I perceive all this to be true, and I fear that voting Green wastes my only opportunity to influence government. Tell me you haven't heard any of that before. This is the vertical climb that the Green Party faces. Changing these base perceptions present in a wide swath of the electorate. Perceptions that elicit a fear or anger-based response. I'm going to ask you to, as we say in the Caribbean, stick a pin in that. Because I need to talk about the other meta issue. Assumption. Now this word also has multiple definitions. For the purpose of my discourse, I will use the following one. A thing that is accepted as true or certain to happen without proof. When we begin to tabulate the number of things that we do based on assumption, the list grows to staggering proportions. I assume that I will wake up tomorrow. I assume my home will be exactly as it was when I went to sleep. I assume I'll wake up relatively healthy, as will my wife and children. I assume I will still have heat, light, shelter, food, water, reliable transport, friendly neighbors, access to information, access to my bank account. The list goes on and on and on. Assumption drives every aspect of our forward planning. Every single one. You make weekend plans because you assume you'll live to see the weekend. You invest in RSPs because you assume you'll retire. You ride mass transit because you assume the vehicles and systems meet agreed upon safety standards and that people regularly check to ensure those standards are met. And yet everyone in this room knows that none of those things are assured. Not one. Only two things are assured. Forgive my morbidity. We live and we die. So what does assumption have to do with the Green Party? Vast numbers of voters assume the Green Party is unelectable, and they therefore will not vote for it. Vast numbers of people assume climate change won't affect us for quite a while yet, even though they see the images on their screens of extreme weather and incalculable loss. They assume that these are anomalies, which will resolve with time. Vast numbers of people assume that only duplicitous backstabbers succeed in Ontario politics. Vast numbers of voters assume voting is useless, since the corporations control everything and leaders are mere puppets. This is the upside-down climb that the Green Party faces, changing the very assumptions people make about what the Green Party is, what it does and has done, and what it can do. Perceptions and assumptions. These are the meta issues that we face, that we have always faced. And they are the spark plugs of the political engine. I have another greenhouse gas metaphor. I'm so sorry for that. But it applies. The right words at the right time serve as the spark in the chamber, which ignites the fuel-air mixture of fear and anger, which sends the piston of activism down the chamber, which turns the crankshaft of policy, which passes to the differential of media, which turns the wheels of change. Words are the currency of politics. Now, people who reside in the part of the political spectrum where we find ourselves veer towards high-minded discourse. Like Michelle Obama famously once said, when they go low, we go high. More recently, Joy Behar, the co-host of the American TV show The View, said in an interview with Bill Maher, no, when they go low, we go low. And she was decrying the liberals' reluctance to resort to tactics and ugliness. But the appeal to reason proves to be a dangerous ploy in a world where reason is devalued. It's all over your screens. You know that's true. People no longer care about reason. They care about what they choose to believe. Populist politicians appeal to this fear. It works. Because it's primal. Do you all know about the amygdala? It's two almond-shaped masses, one in each hemisphere of every one of our brains. Scientists associate the amygdala with emotions. It's one of the three areas that get activated when we feel fear. Here's what's interesting. When the amygdala becomes active, it shuts down the frontal cortex. What's that mean? It means the rational, computing part of the brain, the thing that humans have that no other species has, gets shut down when we feel fear. So if you're a politician that wants to gain advantage, what do? You appeal to voters' fears. If you do this effectively enough, they simply will not think through your promises. Why? Because they can't. It's just science. Speaking of science, there is a movement of which I am certain you are all aware, to demonize science and scientists. This is also based in fear. Because what if they're saying about climate change is true? We have much to fear. In fact, it's simply too much for most of us to consider that we could, or perhaps already have, cemented our fate, and that we will shortly be as extinct as the dinosaurs due to irreversible climate change. Wouldn't it just be easier, at least for now, to just simply believe it's a hoax? That way I can still drive my SUV, and I can still eat at McDonald's, I can still fly in planes, I can still water my lawn every single day. In short, I don't have to change, or even consider changing my lifestyle and habits if I don't accept climate change as real, and at least not partially induced by human activity. Now what's worse is that there are plenty of companies that profit every single day from our runaway rates of consumption. They have a vested interest in us not changing our habits. Because my habits and your habits together contribute positively to their bottom line. And so now, my friends, I come to the two most dangerous perceptions and assumptions of all. Number one, the perception that nothing can be done. And number two, the assumption that someone else will do it. Here lies a truth that simply cannot be overstated. Literally every single issue that I have addressed in my short essay and the way that they develop in the future hangs upon one variable. How many people subscribe to the notion I just gave you versus how many do not? We're talking about sheer volume. If the majority of the population comes to believe that nothing can be done, we arrive at a self-fulfilling prophecy. Nothing will be done. However, when we reach a critical mass of people believing in the possibility of change, change occurs. Obama ascending to the White House offers one example of this. So does Trump. I have little intention of making this about American politics because I feel our neighbors to the south already consume far too much of our attention. Thank you for that. But this point warrants emphasis, especially in the case of 45, I'd like to call it. So many adamantly refuse to believe that such a person could ever ascend to the presidency of the United States. But enough people believed in the possibility and actively created the change. I am attempting here, my friends, to pull back the curtain. We are all distracted, seduced even, by the fire and the smoke. But if we can look behind the curtain and see what is actually there, what is actually going on, then the possibility opens up for rational discourse and positive development. Perceptions and assumptions. So how to achieve this critical mass of people believing in the possibility of change? It always starts with the few and grows to the many. The few meet in coffee houses, church basements, assembly halls, living rooms and kitchens, restaurants, just like this one. They perceive the issue. They resolve to take action. Which brings me neatly to my other point. A point potentially even more dangerous than the first. In my opinion, the twin evil to the perception that nothing can be done is the assumption that someone else will do it. It requires no leap of logic to understand this. If everybody believes somebody else will remedy the issue does not get remedied. Period. Full stop. Here's a more affirming way to put it. The somebody in somebody will do it is you. Sure, I get it. You have a full life. You got barely any time for yourself as it is. Here's some dreadlock dude standing in front of you telling you to do something. And that's whatever's required to affect positive change. So why should you listen to me? Why should you do it? Because if you don't, you are in effect saying someone else will do it. And at one level, you are absolutely correct. Somebody else on the opposite end of the political spectrum will do it. And then you will not have to wonder, we will not have to wonder how the far-right candidate got into office. That's not fear-based politics. That's fact. So you might be reacting internally now to the fact that I'm using the word you here instead of the word we. Perhaps you don't take kindly to some stranger standing in front of you directing you. Fair enough. Why am I not saying we? Because the power of the word we has been diluted by overuse. When a candidate says we, it allows the less motivated, the less ambitious, the less committed individuals to hide in and among the crowd. They get to feel the we without actually doing the grunt work. They get to tacitly agree without building the sweat equity. No, I don't say we. I say you. And me. So it's clear who I'm talking about. Who I'm asking to invest. I'm talking to you. Every one of you. Each and every one of you. And I'm asking you to change the pronoun that gets used through your actions, not your agreement. That is because each one of you, as quaint as it sounds, holds the potential to make a unique contribution. I risk sounding overly poetic here, but they tell us that every snowflake is unique. You need a whole lot of snowflakes for snow to stay on the ground. And you need a tremendous amount of snow to disrupt traffic. Unless, of course, it's the first snowfall of the year, you need 3 snowflakes. The traffic in this case is the flow of political power, the status quo. If you and I aspire to disrupt, you and I need to apply our unique talents and conjoin them. Now, I am within a stone's throw of the age of 50. I know I look really good, don't I? Yeah. Black don't crack. To date, I have never been partisan. I have never been partisan. I have always felt like party politics only serves to muddy, not clear the waters. While the political spectrum is fairly well defined here in Canada, the reality is that parties shift positions to suit a particular agenda on any given day Former Prime Minister Stephen Harper spent a decade moving the center to the right so he could retain power. So in a sense, me serving as the keynote speaker at a Green Party fundraiser seems completely out of character. But viewed through the lens that I just provided, it makes perfect sense. This constitutes one of the ways that I can make a unique contribution. This campaign, in order to be successful, and by successful, I mean our candidate achieving elected office. You and I all need to contribute. You and I need to become snow. And it will take a blizzard. In a blizzard, you can barely see in front of you. But I'm talking about becoming a blizzard that offers the longest future view possible. I am here, my friends, because I feel it is time for me to become partisan. So how do I make the deliberation as to which party with which to affiliate? What metrics do I employ? It's simple, really. I come from a visible minority group. I am the son of poor immigrants. I believe what an immigrant to this country wants more than anything else is to feel included. Included in the social safety net. Included in the wealth potential. Included in the gathering of hands and hearts and minds necessary to build a strong country. And therefore, I choose the party whose philosophy is the most inclusive. Inclusive of all of the people on every point of the socioeconomic spectrum. Inclusive of the earth herself. Now, if you're in this room because you're angry, I understand. The times in which we live well justify your anger. If you're in this room because you're afraid, again, I understand. The times in which we live well justify and substantiate your fear. If you're in this room because you subscribe to higher ideals, I understand. I'm with you in my desire for elevated discourse on these many pressing topics. And if your anger, your fear, and your ideals propelled you to be here, that's great. Whatever it took to get you in the room. But once you leave this room, let the one thing that continues to motivate your action be your desire. Your desire to win. So we need one last definition. The definition of winning. Winning means achieving equality, racial equality, gender equality, faith equality, income equality. Winning means achieving sustainability, sustainable energy, sustainable resource extraction, sustainable water supplies, sustainable job markets, sustainable economic models. Winning means achieving improvements to education, improvements to healthcare, improvements to infrastructure, improvements to services. Winning means our government finally makes decisions and implements policies that benefit the greatest number of species. Winning means adopting ways that provide benefit to the most beings possible. Winning means inclusivity and electing officials who are in complete alignment with this goal. I believe Mike Schreiner is such a person. as the very best kind of politician. A politician formed out of necessity. The kind of politician you and I should be. Someone who sees that something must be done and does it. He saw that big money was polluting Ontario politics, so he worked to end that. He saw that experimental lakes funding was at great risk, so he went in and pushed for those funds and lakes to be preserved. He saw that bee populations were being decimated through pesticide use, so he worked to have limits imposed. And now we see that Mike Schreiner could be the first elected Green Party candidate in the history of Ontario. And so now it is time for you and I to do the work. To be the somebodies who will do all of the some things. To be the countless snowflakes that will add up to the snowstorm that disrupts the flow of conventional political traffic. To be the ones who win, and in so doing, redefine what winning means. To be the ones who build the sustainable, inclusive society. To be the ones who reframe perceptions and dispel assumptions.